In the high desert of southern Oregon, there is a shallow cave carved into the rock. It's a quiet, unassuming place called Rimrock Draw. For generations, archaeologists drove right past it. According to the history books, this area was a dead zone during the Ice Age, too cold, too dry, and too isolated for early humans to survive. The textbooks were clear. The first Americans walked through an ice-free corridor around 13,000 years ago. They carried distinctive spear points. They spread across the continent. Case closed. We had a timeline. We had a map. We were certain. But we were wrong. Underneath a layer of volcanic ash, sealed for 15,000 years, Rimrock Draw was hiding a secret that wasn't just going to rewrite a chapter of history, it was going to tear out the first page and start over. When the team from the University of Oregon arrived, they weren't looking to make history. They were there for a routine check, to study Ice Age animals and soil. They expected a shallow dig. But almost immediately, the ground began to tell a different story. Usually, rock shelters are messy. Roots, rain, and rodents mix the soil, blending history into a chaotic soup. But Rimrock Draw was different. The layers were pristine, flat, sharp, like pages in a sealed book. As the excavators went deeper, they hit a layer of white dust, volcanic ash. Geologists identified it immediately. It was fallout from an eruption of Mount St. Helens, part of what they call the Set S tephra. We know exactly when that mountain blew its top, over 15,000 years ago. That ash acted like a vault door. Anything found above it was recent. Anything below it was ancient. And sitting comfortably beneath that volcanic seal, something was waiting for them. They found a tooth, but not just any tooth. It belonged to Camelops hesternus, a massive, extinct cousin of the modern camel that stood 7 feet tall at the shoulder. Finding an extinct animal is rare, but finding it here was the problem. The bones weren't scattered by predators or weather, they were clustered. And when the researchers looked closer, everyone stopped digging. The bones had cut marks, straight, repetitive lines located exactly at the joints where you would slice to remove meat. This wasn't a wolf or a bear. This was butchery. Then came the radiocarbon dating. They tested the tooth enamel. The result? 18,250 years ago. Let that number sink in. The accepted theory, the Clovis first model, said humans didn't arrive until 13,000 years ago. This camel was butchered 5,000 years before history said humans existed in this hemisphere. Rimrock Draw wasn't alone. Other sites from Chile to Idaho had been whispering the same secret for years. But few had evidence this clean, this undisturbed, this impossible to dismiss. If the dating was right, the old story of America was finished. But science requires more than one clue. They needed the weapon. Buried alongside the camel were stone tools. And these weren't just crude rocks smashed together. They were scrapers, carefully crafted from vibrant orange agate. Here is the twist. Orange agate doesn't exist at Rimrock Draw. The nearest known source sits miles away, in outcrops scattered across the high desert. This means these people didn't just stumble here. They were travelers. They carried specific materials across the landscape, planning ahead, hauling their toolkit with them. The edges were worn down, not by weather, but by work. The wear patterns matched exactly what we see in experimental archaeology when scraping hide and meat from bone. But the skeptics still had one argument left. How do you know the tools and the camel are connected? Maybe they just ended up in the same dirt by coincidence. To answer that, the team turned to technology that didn't exist when the Clovis theory was written. They took the stone tools to the lab for residue analysis. They were looking for ghosts, molecular traces trapped in the microscopic cracks of the stone. When you butcher an animal, fats and proteins get forced into the rock. Under the right conditions, they can survive for millennia. The results came back positive. The residue wasn't mud or plant matter. It was blood. Specifically, the blood proteins of Bison antiquus, another massive, extinct Ice Age beast that once roamed these lands. They had their fingerprint. The time, 18,000 years ago. The victims, Ice Age camel and bison. The weapon, agate tools carried from distant outcrops. The evidence, blood residue still clinging to the stone. The case was now overwhelming. Humans were in Oregon during the height of the Ice Age. They had to come by the coast. They were navigating what researchers call the kelp highway, moving along the Pacific edge, perhaps using boats, surviving on seafood, and pushing inland when the opportunity arose. We're still searching for direct proof of this route. Ancient shorelines now sit underwater, drowned by rising seas, but the logic is inescapable. The interior was blocked, the coast was open, and people were already here. These weren't desperate scavengers, they were explorers, sophisticated, adapted, and thriving in a world we can barely imagine. Rimrock Draw forces us to be humble. For decades, we ignored this site because we thought we knew better. We thought the land was empty. But here is the most exciting part. The excavators found the camel and the tools, but they haven't hit the bottom yet. Beneath the layer dating to 18,250 years ago, there are more layers, deeper deposits with stone flakes that hint at an even older presence. We are staring into an abyss of time, and we have no idea how deep it goes. The discovery at Rimrock Draw didn't just find an old campsite, it restored the dignity of the first Americans. It proved that while we were writing textbooks saying they weren't here, they were already home, sitting by a fire, under the shelter of the rock, waiting for us to find them. The history of humanity in America isn't finished. In fact, we've barely even started reading the first page.